All right, we are going to get started on some instructions on how to build our solar cars. And first we're going to go through all the materials, and then we're going to go through, I'm not going to show every detail, but I'm going to give you some hints along the way of things I found when I was doing this with other kids, of just a little few tips and tricks. All right, so in your envelope you should have a set of instructions. You should have a solar panel. This is the chassis board. There should be some little adhesive tabs, drinking straw, 4 little screw eyes, try not to lose those, 2 front wheels, 2 back wheels, a motor, 2 axles, and there should also be this gear package. Okay, so you can follow the instructions and that's fine. There are lots of great instructions in there. The very first one to start, number 1, tells you to deburr the edges of these axles with some sandpaper. Now, if you don't have sandpaper, when I was doing this with kids, we found we were doing it outside, we used the concrete and it worked just fine. And some of the axles also didn't need anything. They were fine, but some of them had a little bit of roughness on the edge. So you can do that. Either use sandpaper if you have some, or you can use like chalk rock or concrete or something like that. All right, the next instruction, number 2, tells you to do some measurements. And what you will find is in the instructions here, the measurements are given for you here. They're drawn out and it's the exact size of your chassis board. So you can just transfer markings directly from here to your chassis board. All right, so I'm going to pause. I'm going to go do that real quick, and then I'll come back with all the markings on my chassis board for instructions 2, 3, and 4. So now we have our pencil marks on here that mark where we are going to put our axles. The more accurately that you put these on, the smoother your car will run and the straighter it will run. So at this point, if you want to shape your wood, you can do that. I am just going to leave it just as a block. It works just fine that way. But if you wish to give it a point, give it some racing stripes, now's the time when you could do that if you have a saw or something like that. Okay, but again, it also works just fine just as a rectangular piece of wood. The next step, step 6, is the trickiest part that I found when I was doing this with kids, and that is that you are going to push these screw eyes and screw them in to each of these 4 places where you have an X. Okay, you have to push pretty hard. If you have something, even a very sharp pencil that you can use to make a little indent right there to help get it started, that helps. And you want to keep them as straight as possible. And when you end up, you're going to want them in this direction because your axle is going to go through these screw eyes. Okay, so you want them lined up as best as possible. And you are going to just push it in by hand and screw it in. The one thing we found also while we were doing it is that some of them screwed into the boards much more easily than others. I think it's the board. I think some of the boards are, a slightly different part of the tree and you get a slightly different material. Okay, so don't get frustrated or keep trying. We did eventually get all of them in. If you just cannot get it in, you can send me an email, elizabeth@peaknature.org. I can set up a time. You can come by and we can try to do it. Also, I will be at the electric vehicle show on the Science Fest Discovery Day itself, down near the library, between the library and the pond, and I would be happy to do any troubleshooting at that time as well. So I'm going to pause this while I screw these in so you don't have to watch me do that, and then I will come back. here's where I've gotten one started, and then once you get it started, it goes pretty easily to screw it in. It's just that first getting it started. If you screw it in too far, you will see a little bit come through on the other side, but you also want them in pretty firmly so that they're stable. All right, I think I can just feel it starting to come through, so I'm going to stop, and now I'm going to do the other 3 as well. Okay, so here are all 4 of my screw eyes are put in. I will say one of the screws I had did not go in at all. And when I looked at it, there were like no threads on there. So that's why it wasn't going in. Again, if you have any defective parts or missing parts when you're doing this, please send me an email, elizabeth@peaknature.org, and we will get you some extra parts, okay? All right, so we have done step 6. Step 7 is if you wish to paint or otherwise decorate your car, you can do that at this point. Again, I'm just going for the natural block look here. All right, you do want to make sure you don't get any paint in the screw eyes if you're doing that, okay? You can also just draw on it with like markers or other things like that if you want. Step 8, we are going to pick some gears. All right, and with this, the main thing is to make sure you get the right gear. So they sent you all these gears. You can use the other gears for all sorts of experiments. There's a map here that tells you which gear is which. And so we are going to look for gear I, which is this one here, but it can be easy sometimes to get this rotated and to get the wrong one. So when you're doing it, if it doesn't seem to go onto your motor very well, it could be that you have the wrong gear. All right, and so you want to just make sure that you get the right one with the right bore or center hole on it. Okay, all right. So let's see here. I'm pretty sure I have this right. And so we want this one here. Okay. All right, so we're going to get this. Now, on some of these gears, there's like a little extra plastic on them. Okay. On the ones I did, I was able to just kind of pull it off, okay? It says in the instructions you can use a hobby knife. You're welcome to do that if you need to, but I think in most cases it's thin enough you can just pull off any of those little extra pieces that might make your gear not work very smoothly, okay? All right, so I think that's looking good. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is, it says to cut 1/4-inch pieces of the plastic tubing. Plastic tubing is just this drinking straw right here. So you will need a pair of scissors for this, and this piece of straw is going to go on the axle, and it's going to hold the wheel a little bit away from rubbing on the wood. But if it's too tight, then it will actually slow down your wheel. And so you want to get it just the right size. It might be that you have to experiment a little when you try your car. This is one place we found when we were doing it that adjusting the size of this could really make a difference in how fast and smooth the car was running. So I'm gonna cut these 1/4-inch pieces of plastic tubing. And they are flying everywhere. So, okay. So we have our 4 pieces, and as you see, you've got plenty. So if you need to cut some different sizes or whatever, it should be fine. Okay, the next thing we are going to do is put together our axles. We are going to start with one of the back wheels, which are the bigger ones, and we're going to push the axle into this hole. Now what you may find, you may try it, and it may be really, really hard. So if you put the axle straight up and down on something and push the wheel in. That seems to work the best. All right, now you can see here that the axle started to come through the wheel a little too much. We don't want that, so we want to go back so that it is flush with the end of the plastic. And you might have to use something, a piece of scissors or something to do that. Okay, so we have a wheel. Now we're going to put on our gear. And again, if it really doesn't seem like it wants to go on at all, it could be that you have the wrong gear from here. There's one with a 2mm hole, and then there's one with like 1/8 of an inch, and we want the one with the 1/8 of the inch in this case. All right, but hopefully you can get it on. Hopefully. All right, and you're going to push it until it's all the way on. All right, so I have this down like that, and I'm pushing it down. I mean, it takes a bit of force. And again, if you need help, you can come in, email me, and we can try to set up a time to do it, or you can come by the electric vehicle show. All right, and when I've done that, I have pushed out a little bit more of that again, so of the axle. So I'm going to use my scissors to push it back through so that it's just flush with the plastic. Okay, next we are going to put this onto our car. Okay, so when you're reading the instructions, this is step 11. Okay, and we want to make sure we're putting these in the right place. So we want to look at which is the front of the car and which is the back of the car. Okay, all right, so if you refer back to here, the one that's closer to the back is where the rear axle goes. So that's here. All right, and then you want to put it so that when you flip the car over, the gear and the wheel are on the right-hand side. Okay, so we're going to put it through. Oh, wait, forgot my spacer. Okay, we're going to put our spacer, our plastic tubing on. We're going to put this through the holes, hopefully. All right, then we're going to put on another plastic spacer, and then we're going to put on the other wheel. Okay, and again, at this point, you can put it here and push it in. All right, so in doing that, again, this is sticking out a little much, and my wheels are really tight, okay? And that means, oh, it's not going to turn at all. So I want to make sure that when we do this, that the wheels spin as smoothly as they can, okay? So I'm gonna put on a different size spacer here and push this on. Oh, okay. All right, until we get it to move freely. And again, this might take a little trial and error, okay? And this is the part where making these small adjustments can make you a faster car. Okay, so I'm gonna like actually trim down. Well, no, I'm not, because it's flying away. I'm gonna trim down a piece of that and try this again. Okay, so we have our axle one side. Okay, and then we have a piece of tubing, and then we have our other wheel. Okay, all right, and it might still need a little adjustment here because it's still a little bit tight, and I think it's because this side, the axle keeps coming through too far. Okay, so I just kept making adjustments in how far the wheels were pushed onto the axle and the length of those straws there until I got it so that my wheels turn really smoothly. And again, those kind of little adjustments are what are going to help keep it moving much more easily once we apply the solar power. All right, next, I bet you can't guess. Yep, we're gonna do the front wheels the same way, but here, these don't have a gear. So it's just front wheel, spacer, then go through the axle, another spacer, and another wheel. Okay, front wheel, spacer, go through the axles, go through the screws with the axle. Another spacer and another wheel. I'm going to push all that together. All right, and again, put this on too tight the first time, doesn't want to move. So I'm gonna pull them out and adjust them a little bit. All right, and you'll see on mine, if I didn't do it perfect, you know, this one's a little tilted. So, just, that shows you at the beginning, just try to be a little more careful than I was. So we're gonna just adjust this until we get this where it can move smoothly. All right, that's better. And before, like I was crushing that little piece of straw there. So I'm just moving the wheels out a little bit at a time. Okay, until they can turn really smoothly. All right. So now we have something that kind of looks like a car. And now it's time to put together our motor and our solar panel. Okay, now it's time to pick another gear. This one is going to go on the motor. You want G or N, they're apparently the same. So it's one of these. It has the 2mm hole on it. So it should be, there's some over here that look a similar size, but those have a bigger hole in the middle. Okay, so here's what we want. We want this one with 20 teeth, but with the 1/8 of an inch. We're gonna take that out. There are a lot of other gears on there, as you can see. You are welcome to try different ones once you get the basic thing to work. And I can feel there's a little bit of extra plastic on there, but again, I can pretty much just take it off with my fingernail. Yep. All right, so this is going to go on the motor, and then it will connect with this gear on our chassis, and it will propel. That's what causes the motor to move the car forward. So we're going to press this onto the end of our motor. All right, and then if you want to test it, you can hook the connectors on the solar panel up to the sides of the motor. Now, probably you want your motor to go, or your motor to go in the direction so that your car will go what you think of it as forward. Okay, and so on here in instruction 15 in your instructions, it says there's a small dot next to one of the terminals. All right, and here we go, here's a dot. So it's not very easy to see, but that's where then you're going to put the negative or the black wire. And then you will connect this red one to the other side. Okay. Now, if your motor doesn't work at first, now remember, you need solar power, right? So right now there's no electricity going into our motor. When we put this in the sun, this material that the solar panel is made out of takes the energy from the sun, it knocks out some electrons, and it actually creates an electric current, and that's going to go through here and turn our motor. So we can take that outside and check that out, just to make sure our motor is working. All right, so now we are going to attach our motor to our car first. All right, and the thing you want to be careful of when you're doing this is making sure the gear here and the gear on your wheel really have a good connection. All right, because otherwise, if they don't, then you're not going to be able to turn your car, right? Okay, all right, and in doing this, I'm pretty sure I put the wrong gear on because it's not connecting. There's no way those are going to connect. All right, and this happens. So I'm going to go back and fix that gear real quick. All right, so we are taking the gears here. We want to make sure when we get the gear to go on our wheels that we have the correct one. The first time I got the wrong one. It needs to be this one here. It's a little bit bigger than these ones in the corner. All right, and we want the one with the larger hole so that it can go on the axle of our car. All right, so now we're going to try to put our motor on. We want to make sure that our motor and our gear on our wheel connect well. Okay, so you're going to take 2 of the adhesive tabs you have and put them over the rear axle. I will say some of these tabs, the paper doesn't come off very well, basically. So if you need to use something else to adhere those together, that's fine. Okay, so if you have some other tape or a different type of glue, the one thing with these are it lets you sort of move things around a little bit until you find the right place for your motor. All right, so I'm gonna put those on there and then peel off this other side, and then I'll put the motor right on here so that it has a good connection between the 2 gears there. All right, but again, if you need to use some sort of other adhesive to do this, hot glue, duct tape, you could probably duct tape over the motor a little bit. Yeah, either of those would work. Okay, so I finally have my adhesive here with both sides off. Some of them are easy, some of them are not so easy. So now we're going to put our motor on. And again, this is one of those things where little places can make a big difference. So you want to make sure it's lined up with the axle and that your gears are connecting. All right, if your gears seem to not connect, all right, so here they are. One thing can be if you didn't screw these screw eyes in far enough, so you could take your axle off, screw those in another couple turns, and then it'll be a little bit closer. So that's something you can do if it seems like it's not connecting very well there. All right, but then the only other thing to do is to put adhesive on our solar panel, hook up our leads, and let it go. All right, so I actually had to use one of my other adhesive tabs on the motor because one of them just didn't work. So I'm going to, it says to put one up here and one down here for the solar panel. I'm just going to attach it to the motor, but that still works pretty well. Okay, so I'm going to put this back here. My motor, on my solar panel. Some of them peel off just fine, and then attach it there. And then I'm going to attach one connector to one side of the motor and one to the other side of the motor. If you're interested in learning about how motors work, we do have a video on our website about electromagnets, and that's what helps make a motor work. And if you run a motor backwards, that's how we get a generator, and that's how we get a lot of our electricity here in Los Alamos. So now we're going to take this outside into the bright sunlight and see if we can get it to run. All right, I brought my car outside in the bright sunlight, and you can hear it and maybe see it that the gear is turning the wheels. I'm supposed to put it down. You can watch it go.